All right. So it's been a few days. I think I crashed and burned before. I was so tired and had probably been programming a little bit too much that I took it a bit easier the last few nights. I'm feeling a bit better and actually had a good productive week this week. So I decided that for Friday midday here, I would take a break from my normal work and finish up the sort of the base resource creation in Ember. Hopefully we'll get done with kind of the core, just have things work and hooked up part today so that we can move on to um, authorization, deployment, both to AWS on the Ember side and to Heroku on the Rails side, and then start to work on the user interface a bit more to make it mobile friendly and give it some more functionality, etc. So obviously, always a lot more to do, but we will, we'll just finish getting the base set up here and then see. So it's 10 o'clock in the morning. Usually I record at 10 o'clock in the evening, so I don't have my late at night, I'm tired excuse today. Hopefully things will go nice and smoothly. All right. So I don't really recall where we were when left off, so I will. I'm going to flip over and let's just see where we picked up, or see where we left off and pick up there rather. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at, let's just open up our application. All right. All right, so we'll start this. I actually don't think I'm using Foreman yet. All right. All right. So I hope that I left everything in good shape. It's a huge pet peeve of mine if I didn't, so I would think that I did, but we will see. So again, if you're new to this, we're creating a charity auction management web application, and I actually have to hit a milestone by this weekend so that the charity that I am involved with can use this. So there's a little bit of urgency here. All right, so let's open up Chrome, check out where we were. Okay, so there we go. So we've picked up, given that Chrome stored my credentials in local storage here, can see where I left off without logging in or anything. Looks like we've got organization creation, right? So let's go back there. Yep, so I can create the new organization, then I can add an auction to it, and then inside the auction, I can add a donation. Let's see if this is working or not. Okay, well, I'm not sure. It looks like we haven't added that. So it looks like we've got sort of the basics of the user, organization, membership. Those are two different resources, organization and membership, auction and donation. So what I'd like to do now is go through and make sure that for each of the resources, we've got the attributes in and the relationships. Again, just sort of basic block and tackling. Clean up anything that we see that was written when, in a way that we don't like, and then create some issues from there around things that we're seeing now that we're using the application that we don't really love. All right, so let's do that. I'm going to open up GitHub. We'll keep track of some things there. All right, so there's the server side, and then I'll open up the client side too. Reduction web. All right, good. Let's see what we left off here. So issues, we've got new organization route. I don't know what that means. I think that we have this done though. So I will mark this as done. And all right, someday. Okay, so we don't have any of issues left on this. And then on the server side, let's just check out what we have. So add a user as member of organization on create. We did this, so I'm going to close this. And again, just trying to, keep things tidy so we can actually depend on this list as we go. All right, so that's done. Okay, so this is all up to date now. So let's go through and do the audit on whether or not we've added the things that we think that we should add to each of the resources. Okay, so we'll just go one by one through. Let's start with organization, see where we were with that. And I think that we're not going to actually implement anything just yet. We're going to create issues, and then that'll give us a nice sort of punch list to work through. All right, so on the organization side, here we go. Post organizations. So that only has name, so we are good to go on that one. Now let's go into one, and next we'll have auction. So for auction, we only have name implemented presently, but you can see that there are a number of additional, you can see we've got organization, but that was created based on the nesting of the route. So let's add you to add the remainder of these. Okay, so implement all auction attributes. And I'll just make a bullet for each of these here. So we've got the donation window ends at. And then if we've got any notes about things that we maybe want to think about on each of these, I'll make them now. All right, so that's when you can donate, the time after which we can donate. Now, we don't have any logic connected to this yet, and that's fine. We eventually will, but I think for now, we're just sort of interested in persisting the data. We've got starts at and ends at. Ends at. We've got time zone ID and then the physical address. Okay. So we'll add those in a few minutes. Okay, and then after auction, we had donation. Let's see what we had there. So there's quite a bit on this one, and we only have presently, let's see. Oh, we don't want to make this a link back to the organization, so I'll add that as an issue. Make organization title link back to organization route. All right. And I know that, it's not that interesting to sit here and go through the issue management, but I found that this is as important of a part of programming as anything else. And if I don't do it, then I find myself when I'm ready to work that I don't, like I am right now, that I don't have the work organized in such a way that I can just dive right in. And this work doesn't actually take that long, but makes the other time you spend just so much more efficient. Okay, so back to this. So now we are in an auction and we want to add a donation. So right now we only have donation or title and donation category, and I'm not even sure if donation category is working. So let's check if that is right now, because this is where at like 2 in the morning or whatever last time I was beating my head against the wall, when in fact it really wasn't that hard of a thing to fix it all. But so this is, say, vacation home, and then there we go, category vacation home. So I'm just gonna save this and then look at the server side to see, or I guess I can look at Ember data. And we will look to see what is saved. So let's see. So this is this one. All right, now I can see that. Let's take a look at the donation category. And it is saved. So that we did implement. Okay. Let's go through the rest of the list then. So we have display description. That's like the thing that's on the table. So we're going to add that. So display description. Okay, we still want that. And I think we'll get to this in a minute, but I think I was a little overzealous with some of the requirements that I put on some things for the design of this. But so I think we're going to back off on the server side some of the validations that we included, but you know, we'll come to that in a minute. Okay, so we've got the quantity. What else do we have? Redemption window starts at and ends at. All right. So this is when the thing that's being donated can actually be consumed, which can be any time, or it could be like a particular week if it was something like a vacation home. And if you want to go back to the very beginning of this process, all of these requirements came from like what they've needed over the years in running these charity auctions, which is interesting because I wouldn't have come up with some of them as sort of MVP requirements, but I mean, they just based on what they've needed, they actually kind of are. You know, that's sort of an interesting observation because I think it tells you something about you know, the assumptions you'd make and sort of understanding what users need. Okay, so we've got the admin follow-up needed is like, does someone need to communicate to this person before the item's finalized? Not exactly sure how we'll use that, but I know that it's needed for sort of the auction management process. Fulfillment type is whether you get like a redemption certificate or if you get the actual item itself when you leave the auction that day. Bid type, we've got live auction and silent auction and possibly some others. We've punted on a bit of the details there, but that's that. We already have donation category, where I already have auction, and donor we do not have, which we need. Okay. So there we go. Yeah, I think that those are the basics. So what we're going to do now is just sort of go through, and these are all quite easy things to add. We're going to add those. We're going to reconsider, I think from the beginning, probably with user too, if we want to have everything required that we had. And we've got donor as user, and I think that that's an interesting question. You know, do we want to, what's the workflow we're going to use to add donors or users that aren't already in the system? I think that'll be the first sort of interesting feature that we add on top of just the basic CRUD. But for now, let's just get the basics in, and then we can go back and add the rest. So one thing that I just noticed here looking at this is we don't have any, we don't have the sort of the read view for a particular donation. So I think I want to add that. Okay. All right. All right, so why don't we just start anywhere here and go through. So let's bang out some of the easy ones first, just because why not? So we're going to make the organization title link back to the organization route. All right. All right, so we've got, you know, one thing that you can do if you want to see where that is if we go into the Ember Inspector in the view tree, then when I go over these, you'll see which one it's in. So it's in the organization template, which is a pretty handy thing to be able to see. And looks like we've got organization title component here. And then here we want to have this be a link. All right. Interesting. So that's funny. Now, before we made it so that you could click on that to edit it instead of just clicking on this, but I think that we do not want that behavior anymore. So I'm going to just remove that action from here. And now it takes us back there, which is, I think, what we'd like more. Okay. I think that's having this edit organization name equals false be there when it's false feels a little weird to me. Like maybe that's not necessary, but I don't think it's a big deal. So we'll just keep it like that for now. All right, so we're gonna close this guy. All right, cool. So and you can see sort of how stress relieving it is to have issues like that, right? I mean, we'll just go one by one, and it's really no big deal to do any of them. Let's add the auction attributes next. Okay, so what do we want to start with? Start with the physical address. I think that's the simplest. So one thing that I do now, I'm not working in a team now, but just it may be helpful for sort of management of how you work in GitHub, is I usually have a label that is like either in progress or working on now or something obvious, right? So I'll say working on now. And I like that because then it's sort of obvious that someone's checked out an issue. I think that assignment of issues doesn't quite get this done, because once in a while you may want to work on something that someone else is assigned if you have a good reason, or you may want to have an idea of what someone else is in the process of doing just to provide context to your work. So I generally add that label in. And then we'll mark before I work on something what I'm working on in order to sort of make it clear to the rest of the group. And sometimes, it's just for my own benefit in case I leave and then pick up later, I can see what I was in the middle of. Okay, so we'll add physical address first. There's really nothing to this that's that interesting, right? We'll just add physical address. Let's make sure that the auction has this, which probably doesn't. No. It's gonna be a text area, and it'll have like, 3 rows and 40 columns. Oh, of course I put this on the wrong template, which is kind of silly. So this is auction new. There we go. No dash in that. Okay. And again, we are not worrying about the design any of this yet. We'll come back and do that later. So now, I'll take a look in my Ember inspector at the auction as I build it. So it's setting that as we'd expect. And let's see. So test auction 1, 2, 3 main. And that persisted fine. I see that there. Okay, so we've got that one done. Now, why don't we also implement, when we do that, then that we can, on the show page for an auction, we'll just add those attributes for, for now, sort of under here. So this is going to be on the auction index. And for now, I'm just going to make a DL and list these off. I think that we likely will change that, but it's okay. We can get to that once we're in the styling side. And I think that reasonable people could think that this is a bad decision, which is to sort of not have it designed when we're building out the basic CRUD. And I think that they'd have a point. But for me, I tend to sort of go to strengths, and I don't, I want to have the basic deal working, and then go and liberally copy what some other people have thought of in terms of mobile first design that's good. It's just not my strength and not the place that I like to start. I tend to be able to think through things this way a little bit easier. Oh, this is the model. Okay. So good. Now we don't have any way to edit the auction now. Perhaps that's something now we want to implement. Yeah, why don't we do that now? I think that it's a reasonable time and something that is we're going to have to do. So I'm going to add that to my issue. Right, so I'm going to check that off. I'm going to go back and say implement auction editing. I'll work on this now. Whoops, I didn't save that. And I think it's fine to have both of those be working on now. Okay, so back here, let's think about what we want. So I think that under, in our auction template, we want to add an edit button just like we had for there. So let's go add that. I don't think this is on the index. I think we want it on the auction itself. Yeah. All right. So now we should see that error because we don't have this route yet. I also didn't even put the route in, which is silly. So this is going to be, let's see. So it's organization.auction.edit. I think that's the route that we want here. Now we still don't have that route, but now at least we'll see the right error. So, and of course I didn't type it correctly. There we go. All right, so now we need to add then this edit route. Auction edit. Okay. All right, so now we should see that not fail. And when I click on it, great. So now everything is sort of as we'd imagine, except we don't have the form. So let's figure out how we're going to want to do that, right? So we've nested this under here, it's picking up the auction. Good. Okay, so let's think about what we want. So I think we should be able to reuse the same form that we were using for the new. So maybe we can refactor that into a component. So to do that, why don't we go back to the new auction here? And why don't we refactor this to use the component? And then once we've done that, sort of moving it over to have the edit use it too will be nice and straightforward. I think that that seems like a reasonable plan, at least. Okay, so here we go. So we've sort of got a choice here. We can have this entire thing be the form component for the auction, which I think is reasonable. Yeah, why don't we do that? And you'll see with Ember, and I think I'm like this with Rails too, I'm not going to have a lot of stress about how we do this. You know, I don't program enough in Ember to feel like I've got exactly the right idioms to use for everything that are up to date with how people are feeling with 2.0. I try to stay up on it. You know, I read things, but you know, I'm not going to sweat it too much. It's not that hard to change when we have to change, and you know, I just want to get into a flow. So, okay, so the component, we'll call this the auction form, I guess. Seems fine. And I think this flow too of sort of just writing the thing in line and then waiting for the need to have it be extracted into a component is probably better. I don't always follow my own advice here. Like sometimes I'll implement the component too early, and I usually regret it, and I seldom regret doing it this way. So what we'll do is we'll take all of this and I'm going to move it into the auction form. Okay. This is going to break everything for a minute, but it's fine. Auction form, and then I will set the auction equal to the model. Okay. Okay, interesting. So this is rendering it right now. So let's just take a look and see if we think, well, whatever. I'm going to save and see what happens, and you know, it's going to break, but we'll find out why. Let's see what happens. Had no action handler for save auction. Okay, so we've got, I think, a choice here. So we could just implement this save action into the component, or we could provide the action to the component from the controller that it's being used in. And I think let's do it the latter way. Let's add that action to new, because it's possible I think we could want behavior that's slightly different on the edit. Possible, not you know, maybe not, but like I said, I'm not going to sweat it that much. It's not a big deal to do. So I'm gonna change this to say use the action save, because you know we're in the context of this auction form, and I think it looks nicer that way. And then back on our controller for the new auction. Oh, here we go. So we've got already the save auction action, and I'm gonna pass to it the auction. So I do not need this anymore. And then that. Okay. So now I can, when I use this here, I can say that, let's see, so this is on save equals And then I'm going to pass the action itself. Save auction. So what this is doing is it's setting to the property, the attribute on the component named on save, I think these are called closure actions. So it's passing the, the action itself, the function, save auction, that then we can refer to as on save in the component. And actually, to make this more clear, I'm going to call this create auction. The reason I'm going to do that is because then when we're in edit, we can have something like update auction and sort of see how we can use different actions, for the same component. Okay. And then inside of the auction form component, I'm going to add here the actions hash, and I'll say save. I'm going to get the on save, and then that's the action itself. So, and then pass to it this get auction. I think that'll work fine. So let's see if that works. Okay, so VC. There we go. Now, hold on. Now you see an error there. That's not what I expected. Let's see why. I think the reason is that this changed from model, to auction. And I don't even know what the convention is on this now. Do you go by model or by auction? I think auction is a little better. I think it's a little more obvious what's going on when you read it. So I'm going to go with that. There we go. Okay, so we've sort of, in the most basic way, refactored the new to use the component. And let's do a couple of other things that can, let's actually move and use the edit, and we'll see some opportunities to then, do some things that I think are a little bit interesting. So, okay. So now we want to have that edit link, right? So once I'm in here, I can hit edit auction, and then this will have the form there that we just used. So I'm going to go into my edit guy here, and now I want to use that same component where I set the auction to the model, and then for on save, I'll say that this will be the update auction. Now, I think that it's reasonable to say that, hey, this should be the same action, and we could implement it to use the exact same action. But I think having it be two different actions is sort of an interesting idea, and at least we'll see how to do that, which is fine. Okay, so got that. So now I'm going to go to my edit controller, which I do not have yet. So I'm going to do controller organization auction edit. And then once we have that, we'll add our action, which will basically be the same as the other action for now, at least. The other action on the new auction, and then we'll pass that in. Edit. Okay, so, oops, new, heck. So we're going to just basically use the same deal again. But you could imagine wanting to have slightly different behavior here. So I think it's reasonable to have this be its own guy for now. Like, for example, we can transition to route organization.auction on this one, which may not exist, actually. Yeah, so I guess we're going to stick to this. Now in edit, we've got the update action. Good. It says that there is not an update auction. Oh, this was in, I put it in the route accidentally. Okay. All right. So now, there we go. So that's looking right. So now when I go to edit, it's editing and it's got the auction from before. And now I should be able to save this. And it worked, which is super. So let's just check out if things look weird or not. So one is this says new. So I'm going to go back to my little form. So it was that auction form. Let's see, if auction.isNew. Actually, I'm going to say if auction ID, so that it doesn't change sort of in the while it's saving, which can be a little weird. Now it'll say, this will be if edit, otherwise it'll be new. There we go. So I've got that, and then if I went back to this and said new, I'll see new, so good, that's what we expected. And now in this, let's see, the button will have it say like save or create or update. Just to, again, to just make it a little bit more specific. So if the auction ID will say update, otherwise save. Okay. Or otherwise create. There we go. There we go. Okay, so good. That all seems fine. We've refactored that. I'm going to close that issue now. Then we can just add to this auction form the rest of the things that we wanted, and there we go. All right. So where were we here? We were implement auction editing. All right. So good, I've got that guy closed. So now we just need to implement the remaining attributes. I'm going to flip the camera to me for just a second. And no, it's not because I think you want to look at me while I'm doing this, but I need to check my email for a second and I don't want to stop recording. All right. All right, so time to resume. All right, so we had physical address. Now we need to add the time zone so that the times here make sense, right? So they're in a particular time zone. So let's do this one next. This will take a little more thinking, and we'll probably use Well, we'll see. So, all right. So we want in our auction form here to have a select list of the time zones. Okay, so let's go to our auction form. Okay, so I want this to be a select where the options are, I'm just going to write it like they already exist, right? So time zones. Then I'm going to want to have the option. Might be value will be like time zone dot ID, and then this will be time zone dot name. All right, so that's what I'm thinking, and then we'll figure out what to do when they get selected in a second here. So let's. All right, so I'm seeing nothing, which is not a huge shock because we haven't implemented time zones. So let's go back to our auction form. And for now, I'll just implement this right in line. You know, this is something that probably would be shared. So, you know, probably won't stay here, but it's fine to have it here right now. Okay. So we'll have it be just a inline little array of objects. That's fine. So we'll have, let's see, we said ID, and then like America, New York. I'll just put 2 in for now to get everything working. The name will be Eastern, and then I'll have ID America, Chicago, name Central. Okay, and you know, of course, this we should have the full list of time zones, and you know, we can use libraries for that. That'll pull this in and have it be accurate. But that'll be easy to swap out later, right? I mean, I need an array of something that has the ID and the name. As long as I have that, we can implement something later to come back and add something more to it. There we go. So now that's that, which is what we would like. Now we probably want to have a blank, right? So let's add that now. So let's look to time zone. Okay. And I really like I like that you just write the HTML, you know, instead of using a select helper. I think this is much nicer. Again, in earlier versions of Ember, this is not how you would do it, at least not usually. But I think that it's quite good now. Okay, so what we want to have done, though, is when they select a time zone, we want the time zone to update on the model. And if I go and check out the model here, which I will, we can watch and see if that happens, right? So one, I don't even have a time zone attribute, so I'll add that. Time zone. Now, is it time zone ID? Let's look at our documentation. Option post time zone ID. Okay. Now I kind of think it'd be nice. Now the server doesn't have a time zones endpoint. Sometimes I think it's nice, especially if you only want the server to support certain time zones. But you know, when it's like a international agreed upon convention, I think it's reasonable to do it this way. All right, so I've got that now. So when I go back here, I'll see that time zone is undefined, which is what we'd expect. One second, I'm gonna let my dog out. All right, so now what we want is when the user changes the select box, we want that time zone ID to update, which it's not. So we need to add that. Now there's a great blog post here about sort of the idiomatic way, and I think I referenced it on a previous episode, but idiomatic way to deal with select lists that I'm going to refer to just so you can see where I kind of first picked up this approach to doing things, because it was a little bit different before Ember 2.0. And I'm just going to cut to the chase and describe how this works. If you want to look at this blog post, it's on, I'm actually not sure how to say his name, Balint Erdi, I think, his blog, how to do a select dropdown. Okay, so we're going to basically keep it as we had before with a couple changes. One is we're going to add this on change bit here. Copy this over. And so, okay, the action, and then this is a helper mutate, and then this is going to be auction, auction.timezone ID, right? The value, target.value, which is the value of the select, or value of the option that gets selected. And I think he describes why that works, and the documentation does too, actually. So let me see in here just what the description is. So yeah, so he describes here why that works. Okay, so we've got, so change this when on change, and so that should work just as is to change the time zone in that model, which it did not. Let's find out why. Helpful if I close that. Now, there we go. So just as we would expect, it's updating it, which is good. Now, so I'll save that, and then we'll see there's going to be one other issue that we'll need to fix, but this is auction with time zone central. Okay, so now if I go here and if I refresh this, we should see in Ember data, the time zone is correct. So that's persisting the way that we want. If I edit it, you'll see it says select the time zone. So we need to fix that bit, and then we'll be done with this. Right, so that's going to be selected here. And then we have to do equals time zone dot ID and auction dot time zone ID. And there we go, works fine. So we've added our time zone selection guy. That is all we have to do for that. So not much to it. Again, this equal helper, I talked about this in a previous one. This comes from the Ember Truth Helpers add-on, which I saw mentioned. I've used it for other purposes too, but I think it's mentioned in that blog post. Okay. So we've got our time zone implemented. Let's go back to GitHub and make a note of that. All right. So now let's think about how we want to do this. So let's pick any of these. We'll do donation window ends at to begin with. So I'm going to add in here . Okay, and then this is going to be input. Okay, so let's go add that to the model. Yep. Now let's see. Well, let's just start with this. We can add some formatting, some helpers so that the user interface makes the date time easier to pick in a second. Let's just get it working to begin with the backend. Okay. So in my console here, let's see what happens. Yeah, so that did in fact save, and it did what I would hope it would do actually, which is it's saved in UTC here, which is what I would expect. Now the problem is that the time zone, so this is off. So given that it was Central Time, well, let me actually, I think I spoke too soon there. So let's do minus 500. See what happens. Yeah, no, okay, so that worked. So, that is behaving the way that we would expect. Now, the interaction between this and time zone isn't that clear. So why don't we, I'd like to sort of tackle this sooner than later, so why don't we do this now? So what we want to do is that when we're showing the time, we want it to be in the time zone that's specified here. So I'm going to implement the sort of show page for the auction just so we can make sure that that is working as we'd expect. And then we will we'll sort of get back to this. And the way that programming works is that dealing with time zones is always a little tricky. So I'm sure I'll make some stupid mistakes here, but hopefully not, since I just worked on something similar with another project. Okay, so I'm going to go back to GitHub and add the issue for this. No, wait a second, didn't I just do this? Yeah, I did. Okay, we already have the show page for the auction. What am I talking about? I just need to add this to it. We'll just do that each in line with these. So index. So we'll add the time zone. Now I'm just going to do the ID for now because we don't have, I need to be able to look it up with the names. And again, this is why we may want to have like a service or something that provides us with access to the time zones. And that'll be an interesting thing to add in a second. But for now, we'll do the ID since I don't have that service. Okay, so there we go. That's added. And now I'm going to add the time. So what was that? The donation window ends at. Okay, so I'm going to start by just doing the attribute from the model, and then we'll see what it looks like. Yep, which is just okay. So this is interesting. So that's showing just as the string that's coming back from the server. So I think that tells me that the auction itself yeah, I'm not setting the type, which I need to. Now it'll show as the local time, but that's not what we want, right? Because it's showing it because that's what my browser's time is right now. But I want it to display time in the time zone here. So let's do that. So thankfully there is a great add-on, which is Ember CLI Moment, which takes Moment, which many people would know, and makes an Ember add-on for it that I just used, which was really good. So let's go check this out. Okay, so let's just take a quick look so you get an idea of what this is. All right. So installing whatever, that's going to be straightforward. Usage. So we can use it in our HTML bars, templates to format dates, which we're going to do. And we can also use it, sort of import Moment as a module and then use it in our controller, which we'll also do. And you can use Moment without time zones or with, and we're going to use it with. So, you know, that's it. For the rest of sort of knowing about Moment, we'll refer to the Moment website. But let's install this and then fix the, what we just were looking at. Okay. So this will install that. And then while that's doing that, so here in our, we're going to want to change this to like Moment. Was it Moment format? What was the syntax there? Moment format, yeah. Moment format, and then the date, and then the time zone we're going to want to set. And we're going to tell it the time zone from, there we go. So that's what we want. So time zone, and you can do the locales too. We're not going to deal with that now, but we could. Model.time zone ID. Okay, so that will work once we're there. So we've added that, good. Now we're going to want to quit our server and restart it, and then follow the instructions to enable time zones, which we do in environment.js. Okay. All right. So now I've included that. And we'll see what I have not done yet. So this says helper name Moment format could not be found. I wonder if I didn't do something in the installation that I needed to do. Nope. Now it's there. Okay, so now it's showing as that. And just to be clear, the formatting is what we expect. Here I'm going to add the time zone onto the format so that we see it. Now I'm going to go to the Moment website to remind myself of a little bit of this. All right, so it's like we'll take this one and we're going to add a Z on, which is the time zone. I have no idea why my computer will not copy this. Strange. Z. So now we go. Now it's formatting it in CDT. And if we go and take a look at what the time was, will, whoops, what the heck? That's not what I wanted. Let me switch to it being the bottom. So 11:54 GMT. Yeah, this is my local time. So good, that's exactly what, there we go. So finally, so 11:54 GMT Eastern time, that's where I am right now. That's my browser's time, but we're displaying it at 10:54 Central Daylight Time, which is exactly what we want. So great, now we've got the display going in local time. And what I want to do now is make sure on the editing side that it's working as we'd expect. So let's try that out. Okay, so this should be, if I pick Central and then on the time, let's see. If I did like just this without, so I just say 10:54. Now, what you'd want is for that to be interpreted as 10:54 Central Time. So it should be 10:54 Central. And there I see it's an invalid date because it didn't have the, I didn't format it correctly when I created it, which of course we're going to want to have. I wonder why that is failing. Let's figure this out. I thought that was the same thing that I pasted in before, which is why I'm a little confused by why there's a problem there. Interesting. So, well, let's figure this out. It's not clear at all to me why we just saw this error. So we'll track it down. Okay, so there I see that well, let's take a look at our console. Yeah, and that creates a date fine. And in Ember data, that looks fine too. And that gets set to null when we're sending it. So the interesting bit about this is that back when we had, so I think I remember what we changed now. So back here, when we didn't have this as a date, right? And I say new auction, and save it, watch the guy at the bottom here, then it saves fine. But, and interestingly, if I will copy this, then switch to auction. Oh, heck, that's dumb. Date, that's what I meant. All right. It's set to null. Okay, so we got to deal with setting the date not directly from the, which makes sense, not directly from the form. So what we're going to do here is we'll, back in our auction form, let's see, this is going to be, I'll call this local donation window ends at. All right, and then on the auction form, I will let's see, what do I want to do? So when that gets set, I will set the UTC time on the auction. Yeah, so let's do that. So this is local donation window ends at. All right, so I think I may change this, but I think I'm going to do it this way. So I'm going to have when it's set that, let's see, I think I want to update the donation window ends at to the UTC version of this and then return it. So and pardon me as I stumble through this because that's going to happen. Okay, so I'm going to say this set auction dot donation window ends at to the moment. Now let's take a look at the moment documentation here. Moment time zone. All right. So I'm going to say here we go. So I'm going to create it this way. So I'll say moment.tz, and then it'll be the local donation window ends at, which is the value here. And then this get the time zone. Okay. So that will give me, and then I want to convert that to UTC. Clone and then TZ UTC. Now I need to set this to a date. So I'll say new date. I suspect there may be a more idiomatic way to do what I just did, but let's get that working first. Okay, so again, and then I'll return the value. Okay, and then the get will be right, moment, and then this will be the auction donation window ends at. And then this will be in, we want to convert this to a time zone, right? So it's that, and then it'll be .tz, and then the time zone. Okay. Well, we'll see if I got this right. Okay. So again, what this is expecting is a value that moment can parse into a date that's in the local time. So let's say if we said central and then took this, I think it can probably parse that. Okay. Now first, let's just see even what it's doing here. All right, so you see that donation window ends at from this is getting set, so that's encouraging. I'll hit create and let's watch what happens. Okay, so there's good news and bad news here. So the good news is that you see that it did persist correctly. The bad news is now that is not the time that we thought. But if you go back to the template before, you'll see why. All right, so we were formatting, let's see, the donation window ends at in, yeah, so this is not what I would expect. So let's take a look at what was sent to the server. So what was sent to the server was 10:54 as the UTC time, right? Which is not what we expected. We thought that 10:54 was going to be local and then we would convert. So let's take a look at where we screwed up in our auction form then. All right, so let's just log some of the bits here, figure it out. Okay, let's see what's happening then when we create a new auction. Okay, so it says should be CDT time T554 -5. So -5 is central, but the 554 is not what we would think, or not what I would think is going to be here. So that means that it thinks that this is UTC time, not the local time. So let's figure out why. And to all right. So this would say, if I understand how moment works right, that this is 12 o'clock in Chicago. And it does. Well, let's save this. Maybe there was a problem with what I was pasting in previously. All right, so now when I save this and go back, we should see that it should be that. And it is. There we go. Now, what the heck was I doing before? Seems like I must have had the time zone in here. Which is okay, that's interesting. So the reason is that moment was keeping that time zone around. Yep. Okay, so that's then behaving as we'd expect. So let's sort of go through this again. So I select the time zone, and then we'll do two examples. So this one, now at 12 o'clock, that should store it in UTC on the server, but then always display it in local time, which is what we want. $12, if I edit it, now it's not editing in that format that I expected, so let's take a look at what's up with that. Okay. So that's just going to be this. So I can format this in that same format we just had, right? So which was like, not that it would matter a lot. Anything that can get parsed is fine, but I think that's what it was, right? Apparently not. Oh, okay, I just hadn't refreshed. There we go. Update that. Let's see if we can update it fine. Make that 13. We want to take a look at this. Yep, there we go. That works. So good. Now let's take a look at this issue that tells us we're doing it wrong so we can learn a little bit more. Construction using a non-ISO string is deprecated. Oh, okay. So that's fine. So we just have to provide the format, and then, so in our case, what we were just doing, we'll just literally provide this format. It'll be whatever format we're using later, but here we go. I'm not positive if we can do this here. I sort of suspect we can't, but let's find out. That's not what I wanted to do. All right, so so 12 o'clock Central. There we go. And let's see if it's still yelling at us, which it's not. So that's good. Now, we're going to have to tweak this once we put something nice looking in, but this is working. This is working nicely. So, let's clean this up a little bit. We'll say local moment equals this bit. Then local moment time zone UTC format. Setting the date to that. Returning the value. Cool. So that is great. Now, if we even change let's keep this the same, but change this. Should still be 2 p.m. Oh, and it's not. It is not what I wanted. Now it is. Oh, interesting. So I think that I have to add the auction.timezone ID here. Let's see if that works now. Okay, so we've got that to 3. Now, if I want to edit this to Central, oh, how sweet is that? That is pretty good. Cool. All right, so now we've got the basic sort of framework for how to add a local time, and I'm sure that there may be other ways. Here, I'm going to switch back to me for a second. I'm sure that there are plenty of other ways to do this, but that one works. And, pretty simple to read and reason about, especially as far as time zones go. And it looks like it'll be friendly with whatever widget we want to add in to actually help with the date time setting, which we'll do in a little bit. Quick check what this email situation is for me, and then we'll get back to it. All right. All right, so now we can sort of bang through the rest of our to-do list here on the auction attributes. All right, so done with the moment for the moment. Let's go back to our issues list and see where we were. So on the auction attributes, we've added donation window ends at. Now we just need to copy starts at and ends, sort of do the same thing for starts at and ends at. Maybe we'll dry it up a little bit in the process, and there we go. So new auctions, we've got this. We want to add the starts at and ends at. Okay. All right, so I'm going to basically use the exact same approach here, right? So we'll do starts at, and then I'm going to have local starts at, and then I will copy this and also do ends at, and we'll just implement it all at the same time, and then check that it works. Okay. I'd be really interested to know if this is the sort of typical way to implement this. Sometimes, I like to sort of keep track with what other people are doing, but I think it's fun to just sort of go at your own on some things like this and, learn some things about, the feature and the functionality of some of these libraries just by yourself. Okay, so, and there's going to be plenty of opportunity to dry this up, I think, but I also am not going to sweat it. So okay. Once we have them working, we'll go and dry it. All right. And I never sweat about doing this at first, it's easy to change it once we see that everything's working and, are in the mood to do that. Whoops. All right. Now I've got to add those to the model. Uh-huh. Okay, I'll say, I'm just going to make a note to us so we remember later. We can change this as we need. So let's see. Dates should be in the format. All right. So this should work. So let's just watch how this goes, or to watch that, we'll just save one. So all the times central, we'll do there we go. So let's see what it looks like. Now we need to add it to our auction index. Ta-da! That looks nice. So we can check those off. All right, so we've got now all of our auction attributes. Now, we haven't like guarded against all the things that can go wrong. Like what if a time zone is not set? Perhaps we should default it. Maybe we default it based on the time zone that the user is currently in, etc. But what if they set it to nothing? Then how do we deal? Like there's a million things that can go wrong, and obviously we're going to want to cover them. But for now, I'm trying to sort of blaze the happy path through the application, and then we can come back in with all that business. All right, so I think we can commit this now as closing up that that issue. All right, show route for the donation. Donation we don't have. I think I typoed that earlier. That was for the auction. So now we've got basically doing the same thing for the donation, yeah, this is going to be mainly pretty straightforward. Here, let me go back to me. All right, so I think I'm going to end here. I'm going to take a break, maybe get something to drink, and I'll resume in a few minutes. Then I return a couple emails, and then when I get back, what we'll do is implement the donation model. Pretty straightforward. There are a couple of interesting things that I think are new that we'll get to, and then at that point we'll have all of the basic CRUD done for the application. And we can start to game plan what's next, where do we want to focus our time. So until next time, see you.